So we were talking about AI, right? And we're talking about kind of people, when you're not in the best frame, right? What might happen? Several of the platforms weren't operating correctly. One of them even was picking a fight with somebody. Was like swearing at them, and I asked my friend. I said, "How could this happen?"
Hold on. You said that something was swearing at. Be more so we
So,
understand.
so somebody was interacting with one of the AI platforms. Anyway, so I asked my friend who works for a big tech company how this might happen, right? And so the response I got was, well, it could be one of three things. There was so much turnover in these, like people were jumping ship, right? It was, you get a $50,000 bonus and you'd have to stay somewhere for 6 months. Not even 2 years, right? Like they changed it used to be 2 years. They're like 6 months, right? So you got some of these higher end programmers that were just, they would get on it, Google, and within 2 months, you'd have somebody like Chris, like a recruiter, like, hey, Microsoft's hiring. They're like, well, I got to stay for 6 months to, unless I got to get back my bonus, but 6 months and a day, I'll be ready to start at Microsoft, right? And so 6 months and a day later, they would quit, and then they would go start at Microsoft, and they'd be there for 6 months, and they'd get their crazy, stupid bonus, and then they'd go work for maybe a startup for 6 months and get their crazy, stupid bonus.
That's the turnover?
That was the turnover, right? So when you have turnover like that with programming, right, every programmer kind of it's like an artist, right? They have their signature. And so that's like a lot of times you have issues, and it's gotten much, much, much better, but years past, right? If you outsourced to India, you would get a program back that worked at like 80 or 90% of what it was supposed to do, because you would have all these you'd have many, many, many programmers, but they all had their little artistry, their little signature. So they might code something in a certain way, and then the next person coded and maybe used a different word, like a British English version of a word versus a U.S. English version of a word, where center, right? CENTER, as we would spell it here in the U.S. But if it was British, CENTRE, right? And so those little variations cause havoc.
So I know this isn't the point of your story, but are you saying that outsourcing it to India, they by definition have multiple programmers? Is that why there was the issue?
That's why the reason that it was outsourced to India was because you could get many more programmers for significantly less money, right? And so where in the US you might have one or two programmers that would work together on a program, but they would make an obscene amount of money, what was thought of as obscene. No one was making $1 million or more. But they would get burnt out because there would be two.
I was just wanting to tease out whether that was sort of a comment on the quality of the Indian programmers, or if it was talking about the fact that there was, by definition, when it was outsourced like that, many more multiple programmers.
Many more multiple programmers, which with individual learning, that created, so individually, good quality, collectively, bad quality, because you had too many variations, right? And so that's why you would oftentimes have issues. Now they've fixed that, right? We're big fans of Zoho. Zoho's beautiful. I'm trying to break it. I can't break it, right? So that's been figured out and it's been fixed, right? But AI is new, right? And so what ended up happening was you had all these different programmers coming in. They were getting headhunted. They would shift jobs, and so they would leave a set of code, and then it would be up to the next person to figure out where they left off, right? So that was one issue, right? Another issue was you could fake your resume. If I knew, and I wish I did, I don't, but I wish I knew what the keywords were to be an AI programmer, right? Like you could fake it. And because things were just so fast-paced and all over the place, management really didn't have time to see who was doing what their effectiveness was. So you had people that were kind of learning on the fly. And at best, and this is a quote, at best, it was a fake it till you make it situation. But unfortunately, with a lot of people, they forgot the make it part, right? Like, so there's the fake it happening, but not the make it. And so that was situation number 2. And then situation number 3 was people are just become disgruntled, right? I'm a leader on this project. We're behind schedule. I'm exhausted. So I don't have energy and capacity to be compassionate. And you're new on my team, and I start using tough language, right? Let's just say tough language, right? Chris, being in the military, couldn't handle tough language. Other people can't handle tough language, right? And so there might have been programmers that put that code in there just to spite their leadership. So this is, kind of what's going on. But I just, with this story, right, have you been in situations, right, where you've been doing something that maybe was over your head, right? You're pushing something out faster than it needs to go, right? Michelle, you were in pharma. I know they have a lot of rules and things like that, but there's also those criteria you're trying to get through, right? Do you have those situations? And then, we'd like to know too, from the folks that are listening to this podcast, send us those situations in, like email us or drop us a line somehow. We'll get that figured out. We'll have that as part of what we do and what you'll see. But we'd love to know, like, what are those stories that you've been involved with, that these situations happen where you're in over your head and didn't turn out well?
Yeah. I mean, not to be goody two-shoes, but I really didn't experience that in pharma. There's so many layers of checks and balances and safety involved, because we're talking about human lives here, that we really didn't do a lot of like cutting corners. What happened was, when something had to give, it was usually the people. It was a very people-focused corporate environment that I happened to be in. Not all of them are like that. And so people felt so identified with the mission that they would give up their vacations and give up their weekends and give up their nights. And that's not new. Lots of places do that. But I think the motivation was not, you weren't getting any more money for that, and you weren't necessarily getting a bonus for that. You were doing that because there was a phrase called "the patients are waiting." And so you get really identified with the mission, and these folks are suffering. In some cases it's life-threatening, and you're just like, all right, I guess I'll forget about spring break this year. Just work harder. And there's a beauty in that in a certain way, but it's also not really sustainable, and it's not really how it's meant to be. And so the cutting of the corners was the cutting of the people's mental health, I would say. But I know that there's probably situations that I'm not aware of in corners of my company where that was done, but really nothing that I'm aware of.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Unforeseen side effects.
Yes, right.
I think everyone's been in some type of, situation or, had some type of story where someone at their work was just really upset with their job and did certain things despite, right? I'm sure that's not foreign, right? So I could see that people being worked to death in AI, regardless of how big the bonus is, and trying to meet these like crazy deadlines in something that's completely new, being like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll get it done. Yeah, all right. Oh, okay, sure. And then put in whatever they want to put in, and because they know they're going to be gone anyway. I could see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, placeholder.
Yeah.
I don't know what to put here, so I'll just respond in vulgarity. As a placeholder, I'll fix it later. Oh, wait, I got recruited out.